You've made it to position number 5. This is one that I had never seen before, which is kind of shame on me for being an old man and not knowing the classics. Chess kids, that's how I often refer to you. I don't call you checkers kids because that game is not as fun. But today we're going to borrow a little bit from checkers because the strongest move in checkers is called king knee. And today we're going to focus on the king. We're going to look at the 5 strongest king moves of all time. And you want to stick around to the end because there's one king move that I absolutely guarantee you've never seen before. How do I know that? Because I had never seen it before until I prepared for this video. Now, before we get to the strong king moves, I feel like every video needs a little bit of balance. So let's take a look at the worst, wackiest king move of all time. Let's just get this one out of the way. This is not part of our list, but it's just for funsies. If white plays queen h5 on move number 2, not a move I recommend. Black should discard the pawn. But the worst king move of all time, the wackiest, the one that I don't want you to do, would be king to e7. I have absolutely no idea why you'd want to do that. And then queen takes e5 would be checkmate. So I think that's the worst king move, and we're not putting that as part of our list. Let's jump in to the strongest king move, number 1. And here we go. This position is actually a trap that could come up in different openings, but especially in the Sicilian dragon, because the kings are castled on opposite sides, and often the black queen travels out to the square a5. Now, in this type of position, doesn't have to be this exact one, but, I've chosen a specific position because things are highly curated here on ChessKid, just like a Michelin star meal. We like to give the kids a great experience. Now, if white ever plays the move king to b1, black might be like, okay, you're just kind of getting your king off of the c-file, which is true. You're safeguarding the a-pawn, which is true, but the real intention behind the move king b1 is actually a little bit more mysterious and deceivious. No, let's go with deceptive. We like to use proper English here on ChessKid. If black does not realize what's going on, and black plays a totally normal developing move, like rook on a to c8, putting the rook on the half-open file, well, now the secret is going to be revealed. White's going to play the move knight to d5, discover attack on the queen. And here's black's problem. This pawn is loose, this knight is being pressured, the queen's in danger, and if black plays queen takes queen, it is not check. Right, that is an industry term. Usually we say check, but it's not check because the king moved to b1. And because it's not check, that gives white the chance to make an in-between move. White can actually play knight takes pawn check first before coming back to take the queen. Black has one legal move. Now we take the queen, and not only do we win a pawn, but we're threatening this rook, and the d6 pawn is incredibly weak. It is isolated, and white is just totally winning this position. By the way, just to let you know, if you're black, you could try to defend after knight to d5 by playing queen to d8, but now I will shatter your pawn structure. I'll play knight takes knight. Actually, there's a couple of other good moves, but let's just focus on this one. And if you play bishop takes, pawn takes, and again, this pawn is, well, not going to be alive any longer. I'm just going to take it. This bishop is being double attacked. F6 is weak, and white is totally winning. If you are black, let's talk about how to stop it, though. If somebody plays the mysterious king move, king to b1, let's look at it again, king to b1. If you want to attack on the c-file, you could actually move this other rook. Now, you might be like, well, what is the difference there? Well, now the king can actually travel to f8. So if white plays knight to d5, and you play queen takes queen, and this knight attempts the in-between move, well, now the king moves here, and white's got 2 problems. White still has to capture the queen back, but white also has to safeguard the knight, and I don't think white can do both of those moves. I think white is actually going to lose a knight. So watch out for that little king to b1 move. It's a strong one. Okay, moving on to number 2. This one I love, and it may exist somewhere else on the ChessKid website under the mysterious moves section. I actually forgot which video I put it in, but this is kind of a cool one. Totally relatively normal opening chess position, okay? Both sides are developing, the pawn structure is mostly stable. Looks like it's time for, black to castle or black to figure out how to develop this bishop, all reasonable ideas. But instead, what did black play? Black played king to e7. Don't try this at home, chess kids. I've never played such a move in my entire career. The whole point of this move is for the queen to now guard the rook. And what does that do? Well, it allows black to play g5 and suddenly target this queen, which is completely running out of squares. Now you might be like, well, Fun Master Mike, why didn't black just play g5? Well, I already told you the queen and the rook aren't connected. If we go back, if we try to play g5 on move number 1, do you see how this pawn is pinned to the rook? I'm sure you do, because I just drew an arrow. And all white has to do is play bishop takes g5, because if we take back, we actually lose our rook. We lose a lot of material. Let's go back. Now we understand more why king to e7 is so strong. The queen guards the rook, g5 is coming, and if g5 is coming, the queen is running out of squares. Now, if I play g5, your queen has exactly one safe square. She goes to the square h3, but then can you see the pawn going further to g4? Yes, the pawn will go to g4 and will fork the queen and the knight. It is Forktown, not Sacktown. That is the capital of California, okay? It is Forktown. Population black, population winning, population, I'm stealing all of Danny Wrench's isms, okay? But that is the threat, and there's actually not a real great way for white to deal with it. Even though white has a totally free move, it is really hard to get the queen out of there. Now, in the real game, white tried the move knight to e5 because there wasn't a lot else to try, but then we used other tactics to win material. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and can you see a very common fork in this position? It's one we've covered before on ChessKid. It is the famous queen going to the right, but attacking back to the left. The Allen Iverson chess move, the crossover dribble. We go right, we attack back left. Black wins a pawn. And in the hands of a grandmaster, a pawn can often mean the game. Black went on to win this game. Okay, on to number 3. This one, it's in my contract. It's in all chess teachers' contract. When you're talking about mysterious and strong king moves, you have to show this position. This is the famous king walk. Thank you, Nigel Short, for showing us this. In this position, black can barely move at all, and white played king to h2. Notice white could not move the knight because it actually would be a checkmate on g2, unless I guess your knight went backward or something, okay? So the king is the fighting piece here. The rooks totally lock down the d file. The queen totally locks down the king, and there's not much that black can do. So black played rook to c8, not even realizing what was coming. And then here comes the king to g3. And by this point, it's actually already too late. White is totally winning. Black tried moving the rook back, which is basically kind of like giving up. The king went to f4, and can you see where he's going? Yeah, he's just going to keep on going on the dark squares. And when he gets to the square h6, there's going to be a queen and Hilbert checkmate. Queen to g7 is coming. And again, there's not much you can do. The bishop went to c8, and then white just ignored the rook. We don't need the rook for the checkmate. White played the move king to g5, and you can see it is winner, winner, king walk dinner. White won the game, black resigned, because the king is coming to h6, and black cannot defend the dark squares. You might wonder, well, can't the black king play a strong move himself and keep the white king out? Well, he could, but notice now the rook lines up with the king, which makes this pawn pinned. And amazingly, you have queen takes g6. Look how funny that is. The king guards the queen. The pawn can't take because of the pin. Remember, the king can't take because then the kings would have stinky breath. There's a term we don't use very often anymore, but kings, of course, can't touch. So the black king would have to move backward. And now, funnily enough, in this position, you could put the queen on h6, forcing the king here, and the king could dive into f6. What an amazing king. You could even say the king is on the outpost, which it is, and the queen to g7 is coming up very, very soon. All right, that's a pretty cool king walk, and if you didn't already know it, you have to know it. But again, we've got one more at the end that I'm sure you haven't seen before, okay? Anyway, on to position number 4, where I thought it would be a good time to at least show you one endgame. Because the choice of which square to move the king to can often mean the difference between a win or a draw. Sometimes it can even mean the difference between a win and a loss. Now, luckily, white's not going to lose this position, but if white does not make the exact right king move, then white will not be able to win. I should note, of course, that pawn moves are not going to win you the game. Because if you play b3, the pawn can take, and you're out of pawns. And if you play b4, it is a friendly time to remind you that the move en passant, it exists. Oh yeah, not buried in a hole like the groundhog on Groundhog Day. This move always exists. Black can play pawn takes pawn because your pawn moved 2 squares and is right beside my pawn. Pawn takes pawn. It is not illegal. Do not write to our website. We do not have a bug. It is part of the rules of chess. And if you don't know what you're looking at, please, 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 please go watch our video on en passant, because it's not just enough to know that it exists. You have to recognize it on your own in a chess game. Okay, let's go for the direct king move, though. Most kids, when given the opportunity to look at a king move, they're going to pick king c3 because it's the most direct path to the pawn. But remember, it's not just enough to win the pawn. You have to win the pawn, and you have to also not lose the opposition. Black can play the unbelievable defense pawn a3 because Black realizes he was going to lose the pawn anyway. The king was coming to b4 and was going to capture. When Black plays a3, now White is faced with two moves, neither of which are going to work. You could play pawn takes, but now you've got a side pawn, and remember, it's almost impossible to win with a side pawn when the Black king can get to the corner. Is the Black king going to reach the corner? Let's have a little race. Is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? Yes! The king gets to the corner, and now all of the rules of opposition do not matter at all. You simply cannot win with a side pawn. Let's go all the way back. You might be thinking, but Fun Master Mike, if the pawn goes to a3, I can play b3, and I can come around, and I can win this pawn, and I'll have an extra pawn to win with. Well, all of that is true. The problem is, you cannot make all of those king moves and still keep the opposition, because Black will move his king over. You got to go backward. Remember, if you go to b4, you'll lose. The pawn will just go down to a3. So you got to go this way. Black will move over. You're going to go this way. Black will move. You're going to go this way. And now, well, actually, in this position, Black could play king to b4 and actually win your pawn. Okay, or you would still make a draw. Let's just say in this position, the king goes here just to prove my point. Now when White takes, Black will simply get the opposition. And if you remember all the videos we've done here in ChessKid YouTube land, if you want your ChessKid YouTube passport from Fun Master Mike, you've got to know about opposition. Hopefully you can go back and watch some of those videos. This is not a winning position for White because White's king cannot get in front of the pawn. So let's go all the way back one more time to the very beginning. We have to win this pawn, and we have to make sure that this a3 pawn sacrifice defense does not work. So it turns out the only winning move is king to b1. That's right. Now the king is coming around to capture this pawn a little bit more slowly, but defending against the a3 idea. Because here, if Black plays the a3 sacrifice, we're not going to take. We do not want a side pawn. We're going to play b3. Don't go to b4. When you go to b3, it allows your king to get back in front of your pawn more easily. Now, Black can race over with the king. We're going to move our king to a2. Black is racing. We're going to take. Black is racing. The problem is now our king officially gets in front of our pawn. And even if Black plays king b6, we get the opposition. And this is a winning king and pawn endgame for White. So a little bit weird that the king has to go backward to come forward. But that's a pretty strong king move. And in king and pawn endgames, the choice of where to move your king can matter quite a lot. Okay, you've done it, chess kids. You've made it to position number 5. This is one that I had never seen before, which is kind of shame on me for being an old man and not knowing the classics. But here we have two incredibly famous players. White is Garry Kasparov, the 13th world champion of chess and maybe the strongest player of all time. But you know what? Black was pretty good too. Black was also a former world champion, Tigran Petrosian. What number was he? I don't have that memorized. I'm going to let you look that up, okay? But look at Kasparov's position against Petrosian's king. We got a queen.
Hello.
We got a rook. We got another rook. All of them are lined up on these files near the king. We got a knight about to come in to a5 perhaps one day. We got a bishop in the territory. We got another bishop lined up with the king. How could Black possibly survive this position? It looks like White is ready to just crash through. But Petrosian played the unbelievable move, and by the way, the only move, which is king to c6. The king is running away from the danger. Of course, we've unpinned the pawn, which means we might take the knight. But we've also pressured this bishop. And if we can get rid of the bishop, then our king actually has a path to get all the way to the other side of the board where there is going to be safety. For example, if Kasparov had played something like bishop takes bishop, then you could actually take the knight, but I'm going to advise that you take the bishop, and in this position, the king is running away. He's going to get himself to f7, where there is that nice, comfortable wall of pawns, keeping the king warm and safe. And in fact, this position is totally equal. I don't think Kasparov's going to be able to win. Let's go back. In fact, Kasparov tried to continue the attack and played rook on b to a3, just leaving his pieces in danger, thinking that it might be too dangerous to capture. But now Petrosian took, putting this bishop in danger. And of course, if the king takes, he's going to be able to run away. Now, Kasparov played rook takes a6, thinking there might be a checkmate. But after rook takes, the bishop was able to block on b6 because we have the protection of the knight. Now, this knight is still pinned. That knight does not count as a protector, but it turns out Black is surviving. White tried to put PP on the PP by playing bishop to c5, but then queen to d8, and of course the rook can go to b8, and all of Petrosian's defenses are lined up on the bishop. So it turns out black is actually up a piece and went on to win the game with that really, really strong and aggressive king move that I don't think I would have the ability to play myself. There you go. The 5 strongest king moves from the Fun Mastermind catalog. I hope you enjoyed them and hope you learned that the king is more powerful than he seems.